All right, let's, I guess without further ado, let's get this kicked off. Thank you to everyone in the chat tonight. Really excited for this one, or it's morning or afternoon where you are. I apologize. I'd like to introduce Jimmy from Unstoppable Domains. I'll let him take it away from here.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Luke. Appreciate it. And like huge thanks to you, the ETHGlobal team, and the Protocol Labs team for hosting HackFS. Also at Unstoppable, we're huge fans of all the events that ETHGlobal puts together. So it's always awesome for us to be here. So I appreciate it. Much love. Cool. So hey guys, what's up? My name is Jimmy. I am a product manager for Unstoppable Domains. And today we're going to talk a little bit about what Unstoppable is, what kind of the vision is that we have for the future of the internet. And then lastly, we're also going to do, my favorite part, which is a technical demo. We're going to show basically a live demo of a super simple React app of using our libraries in order to actually resolve unstoppable domains and use them on any sort of application, whether it be for payments or whether it be for resolving decentralized websites. And so like what Luke mentioned, I work on Unstoppable. I'm a product manager for a team called the DevTools team. And for me, that's like my absolute favorite job because I'm essentially a PM building like tools and services and libraries and documentation for my favorite people, which are crypto developers. So it's an awesome job. And basically, I get to be part of the ecosystem. I get to participate in a bunch of hackathons and events, just telling people about all the cool stuff that we're building to make it incredibly easy to build on our platform. So that's definitely a huge priority for us. We want more builders. We want a broad ecosystem of apps using Unstoppable Domains. It's not just us showcasing the cool stuff. We want to make sure other people can build cool stuff too. So we'll talk a little bit about how you can get involved in a bunch of the different hacks and bounties that we have that you guys can get involved with as well. Cool. That's enough about agenda. Let's go ahead and get started. And so again, we're going to talk about kind of what Unstoppable is and what the vision is that we have for the internet. Cool. So I guess we'll start off with a problem statement and basically say this isn't really the internet that we sign up for. And so when the internet was basically founded, in quotes, about 30 years ago in the 90s, the advent of TCP/IP and actually the internet working of Web 1.0, there was this huge vision for what we wanted the internet to be. And I say we very loosely because I was definitely not around during this time. We basically wanted kind of this democratized access to information, right? Anyone can build a web page, anyone can find the truth, anyone can communicate to other people around the world instantaneously. And there was definitely a really big feeling of, democratization, about openness, permissionlessness. It was definitely the Wild West. And I think those ethos still really ring true today. But, flash forward 30 years and it's a little bit different than what we wanted to be in the 90s. So firstly, users don't own their data, applications and for lack of a better word, corporations do, right? Very different from Web 1.0 when anyone can make any website and connect to any information. Secondly, apps censor the information that we have because they're basically gated by these corporations. And so they're liable, right? And they basically have ownership over this information. So they basically get to dictate what is on these platforms. And then lastly, data really can't be owned by its users, and therefore there's no composability of data. Which is tough because, again, they're owned by these corporations, right? And so we don't really have true ownership and control over an agency, honestly, over our own data, which is like pretty crazy to think about. And so let's kind of double click into each of these three things, and then we'll talk a little bit about, after setting up the problem statement, how Unstoppable really tries to solve this. So the first thing, users don't really own their data. And so I like to show up this little cartoon from The Economist about 4 years ago. But it's basically these companies, right? These big companies mining data. And that's it's a powerful image, right? It's like, hey, like they're just gathering this natural resource, which is basically our user behaviors, and they're owning it. And they're using it for, God knows what. But at least at a high level, they're selling it to the highest bidder for advertisers. And I think you guys have heard the term, if you're not the user, you're the product. And that's basically our relationship with a lot of these, applications and search engines. So what's the second piece? So the second piece is apps censor data because it's on their platform, because they're liable for it. But what does that actually, mean concretely for an end user? Like, does censorship really matter? And the net of it is that it does matter. And so, about 4.7 billion internet users are currently being censored, and they don't even realize it, right? And they don't realize it until they have to realize it. And so it's kind of what I want to call like counterparty risk. Here we go. And that what that basically means is, okay, there's like another kind of attack vector, another risk vector that you need to think about as an internet user to use the internet, right? Or if you're, if you look at it a different way, if you're a builder, that's another kind of risk vector, right? You're like, hey, like I host on a normal domain, and I didn't really think about what it meant to be, something .fi, but it's actually, owned by the Finnish government. And so that's, a different set of rules and regulations that I have to kind of abide by. And that's counterparty risk, right? And that's more kind of overhead than most people think about when they think about interacting with the internet. And so what does it mean to be censored when you don't realize it and be exposed to counterparty risk? I have two examples for you guys. On the left-hand side, was sometime last year, we had some GoDaddy employees tricked into transferring the control of domain names for crypto firms. These are notable names, right? One of them is Liquid, which is a known exchange, centralized exchange in Asia. And basically, they were subjected to, phishing and other kind of social engineering, where these hackers basically got control over these domain names. And that became an attack vector for these crypto companies, right? If users are trying to go into your domain name, but it redirects into a malicious site, I mean, there's not really a lot you can do with it because, it was essentially owned by another party, right? GoDaddy was the reseller, and they had access to this domain name and basically open up an attack vector for you and your users without you having even to do anything, right? Your security was rock solid. So that's one piece around counterparty risk. The second piece around counterparty risk is relationship to sovereign nations. And so this actually happened quite recently, right? Only a little bit over a month ago. But the United States government actually took down a news site that was, linked to, that was basically based out of Iran, right? They were talking about Iranian-related news. And the US took it down based on, different political agendas and deeming, like counterfactual news for what this Iranian-linked news site was essentially disseminating. Which is pretty crazy because, let's take politics away from it. Like, this is an Iranian company. It lives on Iranian soil. It, has information in Farsi, and it was taken down by the US government. And they were able to do that because they had a .com domain name, right? It was owned by VeriSign, which is a US-based company. And so the US government can just basically do whatever they want with their .com names if it's in their, political agenda. And so again, just another piece of counterparty risk that you just don't really think about when you're building websites, right? And so how do we kind of merge all those things together and think about what does it mean to have a truly decentralized web, right? And so decentralized really means censorship resistant, like we mentioned, just kind of bulletproofing those potential risk vectors that I was talking about. Excuse me. It's permissionless, so anyone can participate. Right? You don't have to get access from any central authority or any other party in order to participate. And it's self-custody. And so what that means is you own it. We own it as individuals, right? We own our data. We own all the content that we share. We own our domain names, right? And so that is something that's super powerful. And so when we think about a decentralized web, I mean, there's a lot of different kind of pieces that essentially allow it to kind of aggregate together into one broader vision. But if the vision that we're setting is essentially this new vision of the web that is owned by those three tenants I just mentioned, blockchain domains are essentially the gateway to the decentralized web. How do people access websites, right? Do they care about TCP/IP? Do they care about hosting on AWS EC2 instance? No, they just know it's google.com. They know it's facebook.com. They don't care about the IP address. They don't care about DNS resolution. They just know it's Google and it works. And that's pretty analogous to kind of how we, view our role in the decentralized web. Obviously, all those components of cloud computing, of content resolution, of peer-to-peer networking are super important. But at the end of the day, we're kind of the first stop for a lot of users in order to onboard into the decentralized web. And we take that responsibility. We don't take that responsibility lightly. We know it's really, really important for people to be able to interface with us and have a really great experience in order to essentially access this new advent of a decentralized web. And I'll sometimes call it Web 3.0 or Web 3. And so it's important. And it's important because it essentially allows access to a wide variety of use cases that we think are going to be really important for the decentralized internet. So the first use case is decentralized websites. I mean, that's pretty intuitive. And I think it's a good response to all the different facts that I brought up earlier in this talk around, how do you have a truly decentralized web stack that hosts content that can't be taken down, that has a domain that is yours forever and can't be taken down either. So pretty important stuff. The second piece is crypto payments. And so right now, if you want to send any form of cryptocurrency, you have a long alphanumeric string in order to send people stuff. And if you're anything like me, you're triple checking the addresses that you're sending because it's just a super painful and stressful experience. You should be able to abstract that, right? And so that's something that was a really important use case for us when we were building, these decentralized domain names. Then the last piece is digital identity, which is kind of a catch-all term, but really thinking about, what does it mean to have a domain name as the gateway to the decentralized web? What does it mean from a username perspective? What does it mean from other information that is important that you want to port from either different parts of the blockchain network or smart contract network into different dapps, or even porting off-chain information on-chain? How do we essentially leverage domain names in order to be able to be the bridge for a lot of other kind of data transfer within the decentralized web? So that's super important for us as well. And so creating censorship-resistant websites is, of course, the first and foremost use case that we think resonates with a lot of people. And when we say censorship-resistant, we don't just mean the fact that you can never kind of take it down. We also mean that it's kind of just yours to own forever, and even if Unstoppable were to disappear, it's yours forever. And the reason why that happens is because we leverage the Ethereum virtual machine. And so without getting too technical yet, basically we have 2 smart contracts deployed on Ethereum that would never go down. And basically one of them is a decentralized registrar, which essentially means a list of ETH addresses that are shown as owners and therefore have right access for these domains. And then the second smart contract is something called the resolver, which basically allows the owner of these domains to write new records, whether it be Bitcoin addresses, ETH addresses, or the hash for content of some sort of decentralized content sharing protocol in order to have a website. And so that is kind of what we mean when we buy Unstoppable. It's unstoppable because it can't be stopped, right? It's just on Ethereum forever. And when you buy a Unstoppable domain, there's nothing that we can do about it, right? You pay, it's a pay once model. You have it forever. And even if Unstoppable were to disappear, again, like it's already deployed on Ethereum, it just lives forever and you own it because you only had to pay once. And I think that's the power of it, is that it's truly decentralized. You don't even need to rely on Unstoppable in order to take advantage of the domains, which is really cool. Yeah, sorry, that was a quick aside, but basically we want to create censorship-resistant websites. You can make dapps, which we've had dapps already deploy using our domain names, and then you can also have other interesting things like NFT galleries and blogs. So we've made templates that are open source. You can check out our Git repo that basically show a way to display your NFTs, whether it be ERC 721 or a different standard. You can also have a blog template as well. And so it's pretty standard kind of WordPress-esque setting or template rather in order to create blogs. So we're trying to add more and more utility for non-technical people to be able to participate in the decentralized web, which I think is really exciting. So it's decentralized websites. And also what's really important is solving the problem with blockchains and making them easier, right? And so on the left-hand side, you see an ETH address and you see a, not quite sure what that is. It's not a Bitcoin address though. But anyway, that gets abstracted away into 0xgym.crypto. And for folks wondering really how that works, essentially, when you enter in my domain name, which is, I mean, I have several, but one of them is 0xgym.crypto, essentially has a response to the resolver smart contract on Ethereum, the one I was mentioning before. And it says, hey, like someone wants to send 0xgym.crypto some ETH. What is this ETH address? And then it will send the request to the smart contract and it'll return 0x8AAB4, blah, 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 whatever. You know, and then they can actually do the value exchange, right? And so it's a little bit of a handshake and a, well, a little bit of a, it's more like content management that needs to happen before actual value transfer can happen. And so it's a quite elegant solution. But that's kind of the importance that we're trying to, or that's kind of the pain point that we're trying to solve and why it's super important to have blockchain domains. It just kind of opens up payments as a use case to the masses for blockchain. Cool. And this is kind of a screenshot of it in action. And quickly, yes. And so this, you can kind of just see it's resolving, you know, 0xgym.crypto is resolving into this ETH address here, which is 0x705A, blah, blah, blah. This is like my actual ETH address. This one before wasn't. This was just a stand-in ETH address. This is my actual ETH address shown on the web. Oh, sorry, on a wallet UI. And so you can purchase a decentralized domain on an Unstoppable website. It's pretty standard. You go to unstoppabledomains.com, you search for whatever you're interested in, and you're able to purchase it. Again, one-time purchase, it's forever. And what's really cool is we have a bunch of new TLDs or top-level domains available now. And so it used to just be .zone, .crypto, but now we have .nft, .dao, .wallet, which I think are really interesting. And so that's pretty straightforward. I think what gets me a lot more excited is the idea of you being able to purchase it in any sort of supported app. And so this is a screenshot of my Ether wallet, which is a really popular open source ETH wallet. And you're actually able to buy Unstoppable domains from their own interface. And so that's really cool because it just shows that we're not really the end, like the gatekeeper of the decentralized web, that there are other kind of participants in this ecosystem for anyone to be able to purchase these decentralized domains. And so that's something that I'm personally pretty excited about. Cool. And so we're growing like I think any company in 2021 crypto is, but we have over 300 million compatible browser installs. We have, I think, 1.2 million domains now. Slide's a bit outdated. We support, you know, over 50 apps. That's something that I'm personally pretty proud of because that's kind of my mandate, right? I want more apps, more really cool use cases that other people are building in our ecosystem. Again, it's not just Unstoppables, you know, 70 people working in a corner trying to make this useful. We want to really allow people to access this open source technology in order to build more use cases for and add more value to the world. That's something that I personally have a lot of affinity towards as a mission. Yeah, and so you can see some of the apps that have been installed with us. Pretty kind of straightforward names here, some top wallets, some top dapps. And so, yeah, now is the right time for blockchain domains. I think, you know, internet censorship is a big part of the conversation right now. I think large companies, there's definitely a narrative of large companies owning data and having a bit too much power in terms of what they can do with it and how they can actually alter the trajectory of our behaviors as a result of it. And I think the loss to trust of traditional institutions is really at an all-time high, right? A lot of people are talking about, you know, the relationship with monetary policy, sovereign nations as it relates to Bitcoin. Some people are talking about the relationship with their bank as it relates to fees, especially overdraft fees and other fees that they kind of are drawing away for folks. So I think, you know, the time is definitely now to think a little bit more about broadly, what is your relationship with, you know, other kind of infrastructure providers, people like, you know, folks that run .org, .com that are centralized entities, right? They're basically just centralized databases, and maybe think about a decentralized option, right? What it means to actually have a domain name that is built on a decentralized registrar that lives on Ethereum, as opposed to some NoSQL DB that lives in Arlington, Virginia or something. And so I'll leave this presentation with a little quote. It's from Brewster Kahle, who is the founder of Internet Archive. And he said, "Let's lock the web open, this time for good." And so Brewster, obviously OG Web 1.0 person, thinking about open sourcing information and thinking about, what is the next step of the internet? Well, the next step of the internet is open, decentralized, democratized, and we're building towards Brewster's vision. Cool. So that was kind of a little bit about our vision and what we want to do. Now let's talk a little bit more about how browsers, or really any dApp developer, can build using unstoppable domains. And so the canonical example that I'll show is essentially a pretty simple resolution. You see here that we go to kyber.crypto, it shows this light dApp that Kyber has, or you go to brad.crypto, which has kind of been our canonical example for an NFT gallery. So it's showing Brad's wallet and what he's displaying as NFTs. He has some pretty interesting one-of-ones that if you click on, go into the open source, the OpenSea page. And so that is pretty standard. And I just want to, I'm going to revisit this. Yeah, so now that we've seen kind of the demo unfold from GIF form, let's actually talk about what it means to build one unstoppable. And we're actually going to go through a demo. Cool. So I'm going to do my demo in two parts. One part is I'm going to show you guys how you can actually build with unstoppable if you were to start from scratch. So I'm going to be in the website, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how you navigate in order to actually access our tools and libraries to integrate with us. And then I'm going to show you a really, really simple app that I built on React that is using our libraries. And I stripped away all the complexity, all the fun JavaScript state changes, and all the CSS shininess to just show you exactly what's happening underneath the hood, just to show you just how easy this is. Cool. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm on our website, and I'm going to go to our doc site here. And I am going to go down and see that I am in app, and I want to, let's say I want to send and receive crypto, right? I just want to resolve a domain using crypto. So I go to the crypto payments here. And so here you can see a pretty nice overview of what it means to actually search for your domain name and get a response for an ETH address in this example. And so lots of architecture, lots of code snippets for JS, Java, and Swift. But I think what I'm most interested in for a quick demo is I'm actually going to go to our JS resolution library. And so I am looking at our JS resolution library, and it's kind of explaining a little bit more about what to do to set up your environment and to download the necessary libraries. And here, what I want to do is I essentially want to search for a decentralized website using a domain. And so I'm going to go to the section called Find IPFS hash for a decentralized decentralized website. And basically, you can just copy paste this code. What it's trying to do is essentially pulling from our JS library and actually trying to resolve, it's building in a resolve IPFS hash function. And we're resolving something called homecakes.crypto, which as a response, you're going to see the IPFS hash next to this pretty standard IPFS gateway URL. And you can do a little bit more interesting things with it. Like you can find a custom record here, or you can actually do it all in the CLI. But basically, it's really that easy in terms of finding a known domain name and essentially resolving with it. Cool. So now what I'm going to do is actually show you what that means in practice. All right, where am I? Okay, we're going to go to the demo here. Okay, cool. So basically, how do I want to do this? Okay, so basically what I'm doing right now is I have already purchased an unstoppable domain. And so if you've already purchased one, or if you haven't, what you need to do is buy one. And you go to my domains. I have a couple. I'm going to click manage for 0xgym.crypto. And so what we have here in the manage flow is basically a bunch of different addresses that you can resolve to. And so what I want to do is actually return the IPFS hash that's attached so I can actually resolve my website. And you can see this is my IPFS hash here. All right, so we'll pause there. This is important, but we will return to it. Okay, so now what I have open, sorry, I'm going to move this Zoom thing out of the way, is literally the simplest app you've ever seen. It's a React app, and I'm actually going to flip open to VS Code to see exactly what's happening. So it could not be simpler, guys. Literally what I'm doing here is I'm downloading a few dependencies. I'm using a standard React boilerplate. I'm importing the JS resolution library from our Git repo. Then what I'm doing is I'm configuring some pretty standard states for this application. And then I have two functions. One is the resolve function, which is basically the most important part of this very simple app. It's essentially reading a domain name and returning what's either going to be a DNS record if you're resolving DNS, or in this case, we're going to be resolving an IPFS hash. And then what it's going to do, it's going to show a string of this record. And then here's the React page. So it's pretty standard. Here's a div block for the actual input. And then it's going to be showing a string for the record, or it's going to be showing an error if nothing happens. Okay, so pretty standard. So remember, this is my IPFS hash that I linked using the Unstoppable UI. And so what that basically means is now on our resolver smart contract, 0xgem.crypto, if it gets requested for the IPFS hash, it's going to return this to whatever client is actually asking for this. So I typed in my domain name, I hit resolve. You can see it's the same exact hash. So this is an IPFS hash. So that's kind of interesting. It's not really that interesting. And so what we can do is we can go to a pretty standard IPFS gateway, copy, paste it as the path, and then we're going to load up my IPFS hash, which is this half-finished decentralized blog, but you can kind of get the gist of what's happening. And so, yeah, that's like basically the whole workflow of like actually using our JS library, getting an IPFS hash in this case, and then you can put it through a gateway in order to actually resolve a decentralized website. And so that's pretty interesting, although not super safe in order to just have a web page for what you're resolving. And so what we actually built is an Unstoppable Domains Google Chrome extension, where essentially if you download this, what it's doing is a pretty similar function to what I just showed in that really simple React app. But it's actually adding another layer of encryption on top of it. And so if I do a native search on Google Chrome, it's going to turn up the same thing. But instead of having it be a web page for my string, it's this BAF kind of abstraction or changing of the hash, and it goes to another pretty standard IPFS DWeb gateway. So yeah, that's basically it. And I have a little bit of a call to action for you guys. And so we have a ton of bounties that you can find in our Discord if you're interested in basically doing what I just laid out, but in a bunch of different pretty interesting use cases. And also, thanks so much. Feel free to join our dev community. We have our docs, which is our homepage, and we also have our Discord, which we're constantly adding for support and a bunch of other things on there. So feel free to join. And if you're hacking with us, if you're hacking with our bounties or hacking with HackFS, please go to our Discord or please go to ETHGlobal's Discord, and we're happy to be as helpful as possible for support.
Right on.
Hey.
Hey. All right. We'd love to take some questions now. We entered the Q&A portion of this. Excellent talk. Does anyone want to go first? Feel free to unmute yourself and turn on your camera if you'd like, or if you're more comfortable remaining off, more than welcome to do that through the chat as well. Got a quick question in the chat. Does Unstoppable support IPNS records instead of IPFS CID only, or are there plans to? It didn't last time I looked.
Yeah, so I think there's definitely plans to support IPNS. I think we already support it, but it's a little bit like obfuscated from the documentation how it works. I think it's like on some support ticket, but yeah, I mean, I think IPNS makes a ton of sense, right? Like then you can have more dynamic content and not have to change your hash all the time. Yeah, I think we're actually working on like making it easier for people to add their IPNS.
Right on.
Just looking through the questions.
Yeah. Someone in the waiting room.
Cool. I see one. Oh no, we have Yuri on.
Hey folks, sorry I joined late, so I'm not gonna ask silly questions. One is if you could share the presentation for review, that would be nice. And the second one was if you happen to have an unstoppable short domain for unstoppable Discord. We've been experimenting with some short links for Puma Discords, and it's been actually pretty fun to have a short URL for that. So it'd be nice to be able to easily jump in and join your Discord as well.
Yeah, sure. Luke, what's the easiest way to share materials? Should we just post it on the ETHGlobal Discord?
Yeah, I was going to say the Unstoppable sponsor channel. It should be the actual key for that. You can post in the sponsor/unstoppable domains channel within the ETHGlobal Discord. You can also use the chat here, but it will disappear after the presentation. So the Discord's probably the best place to do it.
Yeah, I'll just post it there. And you're just to answer your second question on link shortener. So, well, the canned answer is, so in order to get a vanity Discord link, you have to hit like a certain level of boost, which we are actively working towards. We want to be level 3 and we're currently level 2. So that's like a Discord vanity link, which is like discord.gg/ whatever. But the second answer is I could definitely see a world where we just have an unstoppable domain that it resolves to our canned Discord link, and so that actually be pretty interesting. Thanks for getting my brain juices flowing.
That's what we did for us, and we have like chat.puma.tech or chat.puma.gg, and it just redirects to the long Discord URL, but it works pretty well. So
yeah, no, I appreciate it. That's a really good idea.
Great presentation, by the way. So I was wondering because like I was part of, sorry, my camera wasn't. I was working and supporting Handshake, and I had a couple TLD top level domains, and I remember our meeting actually when they were coming up with ENS before it was like talked publicly. Is it possible to set up an SLD sublevel domain with one of my TLDs that I own at all with one of my top level domains, or is it strictly through the TLD owned by, I guess, Ethereum naming service? Is that how it is? You're creating the SLD through unstoppable domains?
Okay, so there's a few levels to this question, and so I think the difference between like unstoppable and ENS versus Handshake is with Handshake, like you own the top level domain, so you own like .888 or something like that. Whereas for ENS and unstoppable, like the smart contracts itself, like themselves actually have the TLDs, and so for us we have .crypto, and for ENS they have .eth, and I think they also have some sort of like ICANN partnership where you can do like .xyz and some other like kind of like more normal domain names. And so that's kind of like to answer your question on that. And so when you talk about like second level domains, for Handshake, like, yeah, if you own like the TLD, you can like mint your own second level domains. But for us, like, and for ENS, like you purchase it from the smart contract, right? And so like for us, it's like we have .crypto, .dio.nft, like you would purchase like Simon.nft, right? As opposed to for Handshake, it's you auction for like .888, and then you can start issuing like Simon.888, right? So hopefully that answers your question in terms of like the differences and what does it mean to have like a TLD versus a second level domain.
Yeah, no, yeah, that answered it quite well. I used a couple of my TLDs for like D-links and a couple of websites that I've created, but it's funny how we all like set up all these dapps, but then we totally forget that we're not truly decentralized because we still are on these centralized websites that can be shut down at any time. So this is a great presentation. I really like it. Definitely gonna go through the demo and check it out myself, see how I can use this.
Cool. Yeah, I appreciate it. And again, if you have questions, go to the ETHGlobal Discord, and I'll be there, man. We'll chat it up.
Got another question in the chat. Are the .crypto TLD smart contracts immutable / upgradable?
That is a good question. I don't quite know what upgradable means in this context, but they are definitely immutable in the sense that like once you mint them, like it's just yours forever. And in terms of upgradable, I mean, feel free to add color into what that means, but from what I interpret, like, does that mean you can add like new features or something on top of it, or like add a new version? Honestly, no. I think what we'd rather do in lieu of that is just deploy a new smart contract that is probably like gas efficient and has a bunch of different features and basically just like migrate people over. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Daniel, if you're still in, I believe. Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, all good. Again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to jump right in or ask inside the chat. This has been a really incredible presentation though. So really excited to see what people do with unstoppable tech throughout this hackathon.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's gonna be good. There's so much awesome stuff to be able to build with this. You know, like just like new ways of building decentralized web, or decentralized chat, or really anything. We have actually a pretty novel integration with Chainlink in order to verify off-chain information. So you can append that to your domain name. We have like Twitter verification. So it gets pretty, you can get in a rabbit hole pretty deep if you go to the doc site.
Sure. I think we're in a really unique moment in crypto on the whole, for usability and the non-technical side. One more question, actually. What are your favorite domains to test on / demo from the chat?
That's a good question. So there's kind of like two answers to this. One is if you're talking about like as just like a developer, like what is like a really good domain to test on? We basically have two resources for that. One is like we have a faucet for testnet domain. So you can just like get a testnet domain and hack on whatever you need to hack on I think like Rinkeby. We also have a list of already deployed, like, or already minted rather, testnet domains that you can just like use to play around with, and you can see what's supposed to be added to it from a record perspective. In terms of my favorite domains that test on and demo, I mean, if I'm like testing in prod, or if like I'm like giving like a hackathon demo, I usually just like to use my own mainnet address, or mainnet domain rather, because I have full write capability for whatever I need to do, and I know that it's going to happen on mainnet. So I like to use that. Of course, we've liked to use Brad.crypto also, which Brad is one of our co-founders, because he has a pretty robust like NFT gallery use case. And so, you build like a little bit of an unofficial repertoire of like different domains that you can put together to like see like, resolution of interesting things, whether it be, like an NFT gallery versus mine's the blog template, versus a Cardano payment address versus an ETH one, right? And so not everyone has every record kind of added to it, and that's like by design. So I just have like kind of like just like this kind of like back pocket of a bunch of random domains just to resolve and show people.
A domain quiver, I like it.
Exactly. More like more just like a little wallet, I suppose.
Topical. Very topical. All right, I think if anyone has any last questions, go for it. I see someone's raising their hand. Go for it.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Hello.
Hey.
Yes. I had a question like it's a totally means like unrelated, especially to unstoppable domains. But still means like no. I think decentralized domains are still haven't got like the attention of a general public and population as the normal centralized domain have. So, what do you think? Like, how long will it take for the normal person to be able to feel comfortable to using IFPS or using unstoppable domains? Thanks.
Hey, that's a really good question, man. Like with any answer I give, there's kind of like layers to it. So I'm gonna give your answer in two different perspectives. One is like the end user using, like feeling comfortable, I guess, with decentralized domains. And the other one is called like the builder that's like doing like something with their own domain. So I can never like really speculate on timelines. But what I can say is like, I think users are going to come a little bit before builders in terms of when you think about like mainstream adoption. And for users, like it's pretty, I don't know, intuitive / abstracted, right? Like if I give someone a URL that's like DAO, like they're not going to really think anything different from these brand new TLDs that have been springing up, right? You see like now like .fi, .network, .finance, .co.io. So it's like just another one for them. So it makes sense. Although I think a prerequisite for that is like a full kind of like ecosystem play where, you know, Google Chrome can natively resolve these domains or Firefox can natively resolve them. So that it becomes a lot more seamless, right? Obviously, you can't do that right now. You need the unstoppable Chrome extension or to inject whatever hash is resolved from that actual domain query. But yeah, so but I still think it's like pretty intuitive for the end user to understand what what a decentralized domain actually is. From a builder perspective, I just think that's going to take a little bit longer. Not to say that people can't build already right now. It's just like, I think it's just going to be more like crypto native builders because they're pretty familiar with the decentralized tech stack. You know, they're pretty familiar with IPFS or even like using other alternatives like Arweave. And they're pretty familiar with like Pinata, like uploading things to Pinata or using Fleek for CI/CD. So, or if they're not, like they can read about it and it's something they can pretty intuitively grok just based on being crypto native. But if you're kind of like a Web 2 developer, you're just like, hey, like I'm just a front end web dev, like I know how to use AWS and that's it. It's just going to be a little bit harder. And I think tooling just needs to be upgraded in terms of doing that, right? And I think that's why we're pretty interested in like being a part of the community. We mean Unstoppable Domains and like being part of these hackathons because that's where we get to talk to builders and improve that tooling, right? That's where like deploying on a decentralized web stack is almost as intuitive as deploying on Web2 based on, you know, a bunch of novel innovations that we're having in this space. Or that's why like we can build a decentralized, like if we can have a decentralized website builder that looks like Webflow, like I think that's like the gold standard, right? For getting like the masses to like build websites. And that's obviously not, you know, it doesn't exist right now, although it should, and it could just based on a lot of kind of like elbow grease and innovation. But yeah, so that's kind of like my long-winded answer for you. I just think it's gonna take a little bit, but it's just gonna come in waves.
Yes, as you mentioned, a web platform is like a web development type, like you mentioned currently. So, do you mean like a platform like Wix or Weebly, like some platform where people can just make a website using unstoppable domain and IPFS?
Yeah, exactly. Something like Wix or Weebly. I said Webflow, which is like a competitor to those. That's a little bit more full featured. But yeah, I think that's kind of like the gold standard for getting non-technical builders to deploy websites on a decentralized web stack.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, brother.
Yeah, thank you, man, for your thoughtful question.
I think we have one more question from the chat. Can I issue subdomains from one unstoppable domain?
So the short answer is yes, you can issue subdomains. We don't actively build like tooling to make it quite easy, but if you go to the documentations, you can definitely find at least a high level view of how you can mint subdomains for an unstoppable domain.
Right on. Does anyone have any last questions? Feel free to post them in the chat or come off mute real quick. Otherwise, I think we'll be wrapping up here. Wanted to thank Jimmy for a great presentation. Thank you for your time. And a huge thank you to everyone for coming out. Really excited to see the progress here and see how everyone uses the unstoppable tech throughout the hackathon.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Luke. Again, like we're super happy to be a part of the ETH community. We think ETHGlobal is just like top tier, just programming. So there's one takeaway that I have for everyone coming. First of all, thanks again for coming and listening to me ramble for like almost 50 minutes now. If there's one takeaway to have for you guys, like please go to the ETHGlobal Discord. Like let's have a good, async conversation there. If you guys have questions, if you guys want to hack on stuff, take a look at the bounties, take a look at the slides. I'm gonna be sharing the link. Just go there. That's kind of, the easiest way I can funnel folks to some action items afterwards.
Absolutely. That's where the unstoppable conversation will continue.
Awesome.
All right.
Thanks again, man.
Take care. We're going to be ending the live stream.